Brothers and sisters, Lent is a time when God invites us to go to holy ground, to come to the burning bush. Like Moses in the first reading, the Lord is inviting us to come and see, to become attentive to what is going on around us so that we can see the Lord of glory inviting us to that fire of divine love. In 2010, when I went on a research trip to the Holy Land, I really got to understand how the Hebrews understood this experience of Moses in the first reading today of the burning bush. Rabbi Yohav told me that this tradition grew when the people of Israel were in exile. You'll remember the story of their exile, how they longed to see God and experience God. You remember that song, By the Rivers of Babylon, where we wept when we remember Zion. And in this experience, they began to think of what had happened to their ancestors, to their great men and women, especially Moses, the lawgiver. That Moses, who was running away from Pharaoh, from oppression, from death, and was staying as an exile. And in this wilderness, where he was shepherding the sheep, God appears to Moses in this amazing spectacle. Now, for the Hebrews, according to Rabbi Yohav, they understand this experience at a deeper level. That even though they were in exile in Babylon, they can encounter God. Why? Because they are in a covenant with God. When you are in a covenant with God, according to this understanding, where you stand is holy ground. Why? Because wherever I stand, God stands with me, because my covenant with God and God's covenant with me is a union that is unbreakable, even when I have sinned, even when I don't merit God's grace. And God has offered us this covenant, enshrined us in this covenant through the blood of God's Son, Jesus Christ. So when you are in a covenant with God, where you stand is holy ground, because where you stand, God stands with you. Our lives here on earth as Christians are not ordinary. So holy ground is the place where God meets each and every one of us. And that place is wherever you are with God. Every moment of your life is a moment of divine encounter. Every experience of your life is an experience of the divine. St. Paul captured this so well. He says, the life I live is not me living, but Jesus lives in me. That's why if you entered into any synagogue, there is the menorah. The menorah is always lit, reminding the worshipers that the burning bush, the fire of God, the dynamic force that controls this universe, the love of God is always burning, is always alive in us, even when we are surrounded by pockets of darkness, even when we fail, even when things around us do not show signs of progress, that God's divine flame is burning. That's the tradition that the Catholic Church has maintained. That's why you enter any Catholic church where there is a Blessed Sacrament, you have that flicker of light reminding all creation, I am the light of the world. So if in the Old Testament, Moses met God in this burning bush, in the New, we now meet God through Jesus Christ, who is the Alpha and the Omega, who is the mediator, who unites us and the whole creation with God. So the whole earth is like God's burning bush, suffused with divine energy and with divine love. And each and every one of us, we are like priests worshiping on the altar of creation, the altar of God. And the Eucharist brings all these together for us as a moment where heaven and earth is united, where we human beings, immortal human beings that we are, that we touch the divine. We touch the margins of heaven when we gather to celebrate and worship God in the Eucharist. Every moment of your life, my dear friend, is a moment of glory. We are surrounded by the cloud of glory. So it's very important, therefore, that we understand this. Where was Moses when God encountered Moses? Moses was doing his daily job. He was not expecting, just like last Sunday, the three disciples in the experience of the transfiguration, they were not expecting to encounter God in the transfiguration in this unique and magnificent way. Moses also was not expecting that, but Moses was attentive. So he says, let me come closer. Let me go closer to see this amazing spectacle. Lent is a time for us to come closer to the spectacle that is our lives, the great things that God is doing for each and every one of us. Lent is a time for us to experience this fire again and become aflame with the fire of divine love and become aflame with this divine energy that helps and heals each and every one of us, that gives us the force, the energy, the grace we need in order, like Moses, to live our lives fully and fruitfully and faithfully in this world. And there are one or two things I like to say in that encounter between God and Moses. God says to Moses, I have seen the affliction of my people. I have heard their cry. I know their suffering, and I am coming to rescue them. God always sees. God always hears. God is touched by what goes on in your life. Sometimes we feel that God is silent when we see the evil in our world, the destruction of innocent lives, the manipulation of the vulnerable, the abuse of the weak. Sometimes we see that the righteous seem not to be on the path of success, that wicked people, evil people, it seems that things are not fair because sometimes the evil ones are the ones who are getting ahead. Sometimes we wonder, God, why do you allow so much evil to happen in the world? We look at what's going on in Ukraine or what's going on in Ethiopia, in Tigray, or in places like Ituri, in Congo-Kinshasa. We see the kinds of heartbreaks that many people have borne as a result of loving, as a result of caring. And we think life is not fair. But God says and reminds us, I see what is going on. My silence is stronger even than my voice because I am coming into the situation. I will intervene and rescue my people. The people who heard the story of the burning bush were people of Israel in exile in Babylon. Perhaps when they heard it, some were doubting. Could this experience of Moses be ours? Can God indeed manifest God's self to us in a unique way to show us the path towards coming out from this terrible and tragic situation? The same way as we hear this word, we are being encouraged to have faith in God, who is able to fulfill God's promises. So, unlike the people in the gospel who saw the tragedy that happened to some people, the tower fell and killed them while they came to church to worship, who see this as, okay, well, that's a good retribution from God, punishment from God for their sins. Jesus reminds us that we do not suffer for our sins. If we did, none of us would be alive today. Rather, we suffer from our sins. The mercy of God is able to rescue us, pardon us, so that we do not suffer for what we have done. If you, O Lord, will mark our guilt, Lord, who will survive? We suffer from our sins. And Lent is a time for us to examine ourselves, to know what are those things that is blocking you from seeing this fire, this flame, this burning bush. Where are you standing? Why do you lose hope? Why do you despair of God's mercy? Why do you think that God cannot rescue you from that situation? If God did it in the past, God can still do it today. And so let us step into that burning bush experience. Let us step onto holy ground. And may you experience the power of God and the flame of divine love. May this fire burn away any evil, any negativity in your life. And may your light shine so that people seeing you, seeing your good works, they might actually see the burning bush of divine love.